Why is that man over there crying, Mommy?
Vanessa Monroe froze with the glass still in her hand when the little girl pointed directly behind her. The entire room went silent. 3-year-old Ellie Sterling had never interrupted an adult conversation before. She had spent months learning to disappear inside the enormous mansion she called home. So why, on the day Vanessa humiliated her in front of billionaires and guests, did Ellie suddenly choose to speak without saying a word? Vanessa slowly turned around. And standing behind her was Adrian Sterling. He had heard everything. Every cold word. Every cruel instruction. Every moment his daughter had been forced to feel like a stranger in her own home. Adrian looked at Ellie first. Not Vanessa. And what he saw in his daughter's eyes was something that hurt more than anger. It was acceptance. Like she had already learned not to expect anyone to defend her. The charity luncheon had been designed to show the world that the Sterling family was perfect. Instead, it exposed the truth hidden behind the mansion's white marble walls. Adrian had built a billion-dollar empire. But somehow, he had missed the one thing that mattered most. His daughter had stopped feeling at home. The Sterling estate was known as one of the most beautiful homes in the city. Magazines had photographed the towering glass windows, the endless gardens, and the breathtaking architecture. People called it a dream house. But 3-year-old Ellie knew something nobody else did. A house could be beautiful and still feel lonely. Every morning, she walked through the polished halls carrying her tiny stuffed rabbit. She never ran. Never shouted. Never touched anything without asking. Mrs. Bennet, the family's longtime nanny, noticed it immediately. Children were supposed to leave evidence that they existed. A forgotten toy. A messy drawing. A loud laugh echoing through the rooms. But Ellie left almost nothing behind. One afternoon, Mrs. Bennet found her sitting at the kitchen table carefully erasing a drawing. The little girl had pressed so hard that the paper had nearly torn. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" Mrs. Bennet asked gently. Ellie covered the paper with her tiny hands. "I made it wrong." Mrs. Bennet sat beside her. "Who told you that?" Ellie looked toward the hallway before answering. "Nobody." But children rarely hide things because nobody told them to. They hide things because someone taught them they should. Mrs. Bennet looked at the drawing after Ellie finally handed it over. It was simple. A tall man. A small girl. A woman with a smiling face. But the woman had been crossed out. "What happened here?" Mrs. Bennet asked. Ellie lowered her eyes. "She doesn't like my pictures." "Who?" The little girl stayed quiet. That silence worried Mrs. Bennet more than any answer could have. Because before Vanessa Monroe arrived, Ellie had filled the house with color. She drew on every piece of paper she could find. She danced while her father cooked breakfast. She asked 1,000 questions every day. But after Vanessa moved into the mansion, something changed. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. That was what made it difficult to notice. Vanessa never screamed. She never created scenes. She was always perfectly dressed. Always polite. Always smiling when guests were around. To everyone outside the family, Vanessa seemed like the perfect woman for Adrian Sterling. She was elegant. Educated. Sophisticated. She knew how to stand beside a billionaire and make the world believe he had finally found happiness after losing his wife. But inside the mansion, the atmosphere slowly changed. The colorful blankets disappeared from the living room. The family photos were replaced with expensive artwork. Ellie's drawings stopped appearing on the refrigerator. Vanessa called it improvement. "We're creating a more refined environment," she told Adrian. Adrian believed her. At least he wanted to. After losing his wife Hannah nearly 2 years earlier, Adrian was desperate to believe life could become normal again. He loved Ellie more than anything. But grief had changed him. He worked longer hours. Took more meetings. Spent more time solving problems for millions of people than noticing the quiet problem inside his own home. Every night, he checked on Ellie while she slept. He kissed her forehead, pulled her blanket higher, and whispered that he loved her. But he never saw her awake. He never saw the way she looked toward the door after he left. He never saw her waiting. Vanessa did. And she interpreted Ellie's sadness as inconvenience. Adrian, she needs structure, Vanessa told him one evening. He looked up from his laptop. She's 3 years old. And that's exactly why she needs guidance. She lost her mother. I understand that. But the way Vanessa said it made Adrian pause. It sounded less like compassion, more like an explanation for why Ellie was difficult. She can't stay attached to the past forever, Vanessa continued. Adrian closed his laptop. She's not attached to the past. She's a child. Vanessa smiled. I'm only trying to help. Those words became her shield. Every concern sounded unreasonable because she always claimed she was helping. But Mrs. Bennet saw the pattern. She saw Ellie stop asking Vanessa to play. She saw Ellie stop bringing her drawings downstairs. She saw Ellie begin whispering instead of speaking. One evening, Mrs. Bennet found Ellie sitting alone near the staircase. The mansion was silent. Too silent. Why aren't you watching your favorite cartoon? Mrs. Bennet asked. Ellie shrugged. Vanessa says loud things make people tired. People? The house. Mrs. Bennet frowned. The house? Ellie nodded seriously. She says the house likes being clean. Mrs. Bennet looked around. The spotless floors. The empty shelves. The rooms that looked like nobody lived there. Then she looked back at Ellie. A child had started worrying about upsetting a building. That was when Mrs. Bennet realized something was deeply wrong. But before she could speak to Adrian, something unexpected happened. Vanessa announced a charity luncheon at the mansion. It was the biggest event they had hosted since their engagement. Business partners were coming. Investors were coming. People who could influence Adrian's company were coming. Vanessa wanted everything flawless. Especially Ellie. The morning of the event, Vanessa dressed Ellie in an expensive white dress. You're going to behave today, she said. Ellie nodded. Yes. You won't interrupt. Yes. You won't run around. Yes. And you won't embarrass me. Ellie looked confused. Embarrass you? Vanessa smiled. Just remember your manners. Ellie nodded again. But she was not thinking about manners. She was thinking about the small envelope hidden in her pocket. Inside was a drawing she had made for Adrian. It showed him as a superhero. Because to Ellie, he was still the person who made everything feel safe. She wanted to give it to him. She waited all morning. But Adrian was delayed at work. Guests arrived. The mansion filled with conversations. Laughter. Expensive perfume. People praising Vanessa for creating such a beautiful home. Nobody noticed Ellie standing near the staircase holding her drawing. Waiting. Until she finally saw Vanessa walk toward the guests. Ellie gathered courage. She stepped forward. Vanessa? The woman turned. Her smile remained because guests were nearby. What is it, Ellie? I made something for Daddy. Vanessa looked at the envelope. Then at the guests. Her expression changed slightly. Not now. But Daddy will like it. Ellie. The little girl stopped. Go upstairs. Ellie blinked. I just want to give it to him. Vanessa leaned closer. Her voice became quieter. You need to understand something. The room continued moving around them. Nobody noticed. You cannot always be the center of attention. Ellie's fingers tightened around the envelope. I'm not. Vanessa sighed. You're making this difficult. Then she said the words Ellie would remember forever. Sometimes children need to know when they don't belong in certain places. Ellie looked down. And for a moment, Vanessa thought she had won. She thought the child would quietly leave. But then something happened. Something nobody expected. Ellie slowly lifted her hand. And pointed behind Vanessa. Vanessa's confidence disappeared. Because she knew that look on Ellie's face. The look of someone who had finally been heard. She turned around. And saw Adrian standing there. His expression was unreadable. The drawing in Ellie's hand slipped slightly. The guests stopped talking. The entire mansion became silent. Adrian looked at Vanessa. Then at his daughter. And quietly asked one question. Can someone please explain to me why my 3-year-old daughter thinks she doesn't belong in her own home? Nobody answered, because the truth had finally walked into the room, and it was standing right in front of them. Adrian did not raise his voice. That was what frightened Vanessa the most. He simply walked toward Ellie and knelt down. "Come here, sweetheart." Ellie hesitated, only for a second, but Adrian noticed. His daughter had hesitated before running into his arms. His daughter, the little girl who once jumped into his arms every time he came home. Now she had to think about whether she was allowed. That realization hit him harder than any accusation. He gently took the drawing from her hand. "Did you make this for me?" Ellie nodded. "I waited." The room went completely still. "You waited?" She looked down. "You were busy." Adrian felt something break inside him. Not because she blamed him. Because she didn't. She said it like it was normal. Like fathers being too busy to notice their children was just something children accepted. Vanessa stepped forward. "Adrian, you're misunderstanding the situation." He looked at her. "Am I?" She was disrupting an important event. "She's my daughter. And I'm trying to teach her boundaries." Adrian stood. "Boundaries?" "Yes." Vanessa looked around at the guests. "She needs discipline. She needs to understand that the world won't revolve around her." Adrian stared at her. "She's 3. And one day she won't be." That sentence stayed in the room, because Adrian finally understood what bothered him. Vanessa was not preparing Ellie for the world. She was preparing the world to have less patience for Ellie. The guests slowly began leaving. Nobody wanted to be involved. Nobody wanted to admit they had witnessed something uncomfortable inside one of the richest homes in the city. After the last guest left, Adrian walked into his office. Vanessa followed. "You're making me look like the villain." Adrian turned. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to." She crossed her arms. "I love you." "Do you love Ellie?" The question caught her off guard. "I care about her." "That wasn't my question." Vanessa looked away. And that answer was louder than words. Adrian sat down. For years, he had convinced himself that love would eventually grow. That Vanessa just needed time. That Ellie would adjust. But children did not need someone who tolerated them. They needed someone who chose them. Vanessa softened her voice. "Adrian, you need to be realistic." "About what?" "About your future." "My future includes my daughter. She can have the best schools. The best opportunities." He stared at her. "What are you saying?" Vanessa hesitated, then finally said it. "Maybe a boarding school would be better." The room went cold. A boarding school? She would have structure. She would have strangers raising her. She would have stability. Adrian stood slowly. "No." Vanessa looked surprised. "No. No child of mine is being sent away because someone finds her inconvenient." For the first time, Vanessa saw that this was not an argument she could win. Because this was not about the mansion. Not about reputation. Not about appearances. It was about Ellie. And then Mrs. Bennet knocked on the door. She had been waiting. "Mr. Sterling," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her. "What is it?" The older woman held a small box in her hands. "I think you need to see what your daughter has been trying to tell you." Adrian opened the box. And what he found inside changed everything. Because hidden beneath years of drawings and memories was proof that Ellie had been carrying a pain nobody noticed. And one final picture revealed the truth Vanessa had been desperate to hide. Mrs. Bennet placed the box carefully on Adrian's desk. She did not rush. She did not explain immediately. She simply waited. Because she knew the truth inside that box was something Adrian needed to discover himself. Adrian looked down. The first drawing on top was old. The paper edges were worn. It showed a small family standing outside the mansion. A man. A woman. A little girl holding both their hands. Adrian recognized it instantly. Anna. His late wife. Ellie. And him. His throat tightened. "When did she make this?" he asked. Mrs. Bennet looked down. 2 months after Hannah passed away. Adrian touched the drawing gently. He remembered that time. He remembered being lost. He remembered trying to survive each day. But he didn't remember Ellie drawing this. How did I not see this? Mrs. Bennet remained quiet for a moment. Then she answered softly. Because you were trying so hard not to fall apart that you didn't notice she was trying to hold you together. The words hurt because they were true. Adrian looked through the drawings one by one. Each picture told a story. There was one of Ellie and him eating breakfast. Another of them walking in the garden. Another of them sitting on the couch watching movies. Then the drawings changed. Slowly. Almost invisibly. At first, Vanessa appeared. A woman standing beside Adrian. Ellie standing nearby. But as the drawings continued, something disappeared. The smiles. The colors. The connection. In one drawing, Vanessa stood beside Adrian while Ellie stood several steps away. In another, Ellie was behind a door. Adrian stared at it. Why is she behind the door? Mrs. Bennet looked away. She said Vanessa told her not to interrupt when adults were talking. Adrian felt his chest tighten. She was drawing what was happening. Yes. And I never noticed. No. That one word hurt more than an accusation. Because Mrs. Bennet wasn't blaming him. She was reminding him. He had been there. But he had not truly been present. Adrian picked up another drawing. This one was different. It was only Ellie and him. No mansion. No expensive furniture. No perfect clothes. Just two people. A father and his daughter. At the top, Ellie had written 3 words in uneven handwriting. My safe place. Adrian closed his eyes. For years, he had believed he was building a safe place for Ellie. But maybe she had only felt safe when it was just the two of them. Mrs. Bennet sat down. There's something else. Adrian looked up. What? She stopped asking Vanessa for anything. Why? Because children learn from rejection faster than adults realize. Adrian swallowed. What do you mean? Mrs. Bennet looked toward the hallway where Ellie was waiting. She used to ask Vanessa to read bedtime stories. Adrian remembered that. He remembered hearing Ellie laugh from upstairs. What happened? One night Vanessa told her she was too busy. That only happened once? Mrs. Bennet shook her head. No. The silence that followed felt heavier. She asked again the next night. And? Vanessa told her, you have your father. You don't need me for everything. Adrian stared at the floor. And Ellie stopped asking? Yes. Just like that. Mrs. Bennet nodded. Just like that. That was the part nobody understood about children. They did not always fight when they were hurt. Sometimes they adapted. Sometimes they became easier to ignore. Sometimes they stopped reaching for someone because reaching hurt too much. Adrian stood and walked toward the window. The same window where he had watched the city for years. Millions of people. Millions of problems. But the biggest one had been inside his own house. I should have known, he whispered. Mrs. Bennet looked at him. She never wanted a bigger house. Adrian turned. She wanted her father. The words stayed with him. Because they explained everything. The mansion. The silence. The drawings. The way Ellie had pointed behind Vanessa instead of crying. She wasn't trying to get Vanessa punished. She was showing Adrian the truth. She trusted him enough to believe he would finally see. That night, Adrian did something he had not done in months. He sat beside Ellie's bed while she was awake. Usually, he waited until she was asleep. Tonight, he wanted her to know he was there. Ellie looked surprised. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. Are you working? Adrian felt the question like a wound. No. She looked at his empty hands. No computer? No computer. No phone. He placed it on the table. No phone. Ellie smiled slightly. A tiny smile. But Adrian noticed. Because he had almost forgotten what it looked like. Can I ask you something? He said. Ellie nodded. Do you like living here? The little girl looked around her room. She took a long time to answer. Then she said something that broke his heart. I like when you're here. Not the mansion. Not the room. Not the luxury. Adrian looked away because he didn't want her to see his eyes filling. What about Vanessa? Ellie became quiet. Immediately. That silence told him everything. Sweetheart, you can tell Daddy the truth. Ellie held her rabbit tighter. She doesn't like when I need things. Adrian frowned. What things? Like hugs. The word almost stopped him. Hugs. Ellie nodded. She says I'm too old to always want hugs. Adrian closed his eyes. 3 years old. Too old for hugs. The sentence made no sense. But to Ellie, it had become a rule. A rule she followed. Did she ever tell you not to tell me? Ellie looked nervous. Adrian immediately softened. It's okay. You're not in trouble. Ellie whispered. She said grown-up problems make daddy sad. That was when Adrian understood. Vanessa had not only created distance. She had created silence. She had convinced Ellie that protecting her father meant hiding her own feelings. And the most painful part was, Ellie had listened. The next morning, Adrian made a decision. He canceled meetings. Canceled interviews. Canceled everything. For the first time in years, the billionaire who could control entire companies sat on the kitchen floor building a toy castle with his daughter. Ellie laughed. A real laugh. Mrs. Bennet watched from the doorway. She had not heard that sound in months. But the moment did not last. Because later that afternoon, Adrian found something hidden inside the bottom drawer of his late wife's old desk. A small envelope. His name was written across the front. The handwriting made him freeze. Anna. His wife. The woman who had been gone for nearly 2 years. He picked it up slowly. His hands began shaking. Because he knew exactly what it was. A letter. A letter written before she died. A letter she had somehow known he would need one day. Adrian sat down. He opened it. The first sentence made his heart stop. Adrian, if you are reading this, it means you have finally noticed what Ellie has been trying to show you. He stared at the page. His breathing changed. Because Hannah knew. She knew her daughter. She knew him. And she knew there was something he would eventually miss. He kept reading. But halfway through the letter, he stopped. Because Hannah had written a warning. A warning about the person Adrian trusted most. And suddenly, everything Vanessa had said and done looked different. Because Hannah had seen this coming before anyone else. And the next words on that page would reveal the truth Adrian was not prepared to face. Adrian stared at the letter in his hands. For several seconds, he couldn't move. The handwriting was unmistakable. The curves of the letters. The small details only Hannah had. It felt impossible. Like a piece of the past had reached through time and found him exactly when he needed it most. He continued reading. Adrian, if Ellie becomes quiet, please don't assume she is okay. His eyes moved slowly across the page. She has always been a child who feels everything deeply. When she stops asking for something, it does not mean she no longer needs it. It means she has learned to live without it. Adrian lowered the letter. His chest felt heavy. Because that was exactly what happened. Ellie had not stopped needing love. She had simply stopped asking for it. He kept reading. Please remember something important. Children do not measure love by the size of their room, the cost of their clothes, or the things we can buy them. They measure love by who notices when they are hurting. Adrian looked around the room. The room where Hannah had once laughed. The room where they had planned their daughter's future. The room where he had promised he would always protect them. He had kept his promise financially. But emotionally? He wasn't sure anymore. The letter continued. I know you, Adrian. You will try to fix pain the way you fix everything else. You will work harder. Go more. Provide more. But Ellie does not need a perfect father. She needs a present one. A tear fell onto the paper. Because Hannah had always known him better than anyone. She knew his greatest strength was also his weakness. When things hurt, he built walls. When things broke, he built solutions. But some things could not be repaired with money. Some things needed time. Some things needed love. At the bottom of the letter was one final paragraph. Be careful of anyone who loves the life you built more than the people you built it for. Adrian stopped. He read that sentence again. Then again. Because suddenly, every conversation with Vanessa replayed in his mind. The mansion. The reputation. The events. The perfect image. Everything had always been about protecting appearances. But never once had Vanessa asked what Ellie needed. Adrian folded the letter carefully. Then he stood. He knew what he had to do. Vanessa was waiting in the living room when he walked downstairs. She looked different. Not physically. She was still elegant. Still composed. But Adrian was seeing something he had ignored before. The distance. The calculation. The way she looked at the house before looking at him. "Adrian," she said softly, "I found Hannah's letter." The color left Vanessa's face. Only for a moment. But Adrian noticed. "You knew about it?" "No." "Did you know Hannah worried about Ellie feeling unwanted?" Vanessa looked uncomfortable. "I think you're letting grief affect your judgment." Adrian almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. Every time the truth became uncomfortable, Vanessa changed the subject. "You're making one bad afternoon into something bigger than it is." "One afternoon?" "Yes." Adrian stepped closer. "You think this is about one afternoon?" Vanessa stayed silent. "It's about every time my daughter lowered her voice because she thought she was being annoying." His voice remained calm. But every word carried weight. "It's about every drawing she hid because she thought it wasn't good enough." Vanessa looked away. "It's about a 3-year-old child believing she needs permission to hug her own father." "That's not fair." Adrian looked at her. "No." The pause. "It isn't." The room became silent. Vanessa finally said what she had been avoiding. "I was never going to be her mother." Adrian nodded slowly. "I know. I told you that from the beginning. You told me you would try." "I tried." "No." Adrian shook his head. "You tried to make her easier for you." That sentence landed harder than anything else. Because deep down, Vanessa knew it was true. She didn't want Ellie to be loved differently. She wanted Ellie to need less. And that was the one thing Adrian could never accept. "I need someone who loves my daughter," he said quietly. Vanessa's eyes filled slightly. "After everything I did for you?" Adrian looked around the mansion. The place where he had convinced himself he had everything. Then he looked toward the staircase. Where Ellie stood quietly listening. "I appreciate what you did for me." He paused. "But I will never sacrifice her heart to keep a relationship." Ellie stepped back when she realized they had seen her. Adrian immediately walked toward her. But before he reached her, she asked something unexpected. "Is Vanessa leaving because I was bad?" Adrian stopped. That question hurt more than anything Vanessa had ever said. Because Ellie was still carrying the blame. He knelt down. "No, sweetheart." "Then why?" "Because sometimes adults make choices that have nothing to do with children." Ellie looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" Adrian held her hand. "I'm sure." For the first time in a long time, Ellie believed him. Vanessa left the Sterling estate 3 days later. There was no public drama. No angry interviews. No accusations. Just a quiet goodbye. Because some endings do not need shouting. Some endings happen when someone finally chooses what matters most. After she left, Adrian expected the mansion to feel empty. Instead, something surprising happened. It started feeling alive. The first change Ellie made was small. She placed her drawings back on the refrigerator. Adrian did not remove them. The next day, she added another. Then another. Soon the perfect white walls began disappearing behind memories. The expensive furniture stayed. But it was no longer the most important thing in the room. There were toys on the floor. Books on the couch. Crayons on the table. Things that showed a child lived there. Mrs. Bennet smiled the first morning she heard Ellie singing again. "You know," she told Adrian, "this house sounds different." Adrian looked toward the kitchen. Ellie was laughing while trying to help make pancakes. "How?" Mrs. Bennet smiled. "It finally sounds like someone belongs here." Months passed. Adrian changed. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But genuinely. He left meetings earlier. He took Ellie to school. He attended small events that nobody photographed. He learned her favorite stories. He learned which songs made her dance. He learned that the biggest moments in a child's life were usually the ones adults considered small. One evening, Ellie brought him a new drawing. "Daddy, I made something." Adrian smiled. "Can I see?" She handed it over. This time he saw 3 figures. Ellie. And Hannah. Above them was a bright sky. Adrian looked carefully. "Who is this?" Ellie smiled. "Mommy." He touched the drawing gently. "Why did you put Mommy there?" Ellie shrugged. "Because she's still our family." Adrian looked at his daughter. The little girl who had been quiet for so long. The little girl who had revealed the truth without saying a word. The little girl who had reminded him that love was not about perfection. It was about presence. He hugged her. And this time, Ellie did not hesitate. She hugged him back immediately. Years later, people would still talk about the Sterling mansion. They would talk about its value, its design, its incredible beauty. But Adrian knew the truth. The mansion was never truly a home because of its walls. It became a home when a little girl finally felt safe enough to fill it with laughter again. Because sometimes the smallest person in the room sees the biggest truth. Sometimes a child's silence is not emptiness. Sometimes it is a message waiting for someone brave enough to listen. And if Ellie's story teaches anything, it is this. The people we love do not always ask loudly when they need us. Sometimes they simply wait. They wait for us to notice. They wait for us to look closer. They wait for us to choose them. If this story touched you, remember that love is not measured by what we provide, but by the moments when we truly show up for the people who need us most. If you believe Ellie deserved to be heard, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more emotional stories about family, courage, and the quiet moments that change lives, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters.